Make sure we're recording first. President Gunther, we're good. Okay.
The hour is upon us this evening for the special meeting. Secretary, please call us the roll.
Directors Huang, here. Sethy,
Here.
Weed,
Here.
Akbari,
Here.
and Gunther.
Here. Madam Manager, any items you would like to bring up as far as?
I can do some quick housekeeping. We'll hit item 2 would be salute to the flag. But before we do that, I can just let folks know. Really for members of the public, welcome to our workshop this afternoon. On behalf of the ACWD Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome the public's participation in this special meeting of the ACWD Board. My name is Ed Stevenson and I serve as the district's general manager. Members of the public may participate in this board meeting in person or remotely by either using the Zoom application or by telephone. Any member of the public participating in person may approach the speaker's podium at the appropriate time. For those participating remotely, note that the meeting agenda and all related materials are available on the district's website at acwd.org. You may reference the instructions at the top of the agenda for how to participate using the controls in the Zoom app or your dial pad if participating by telephone audio. This hybrid board meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public for future viewing. And thank you, President Gunther. That completes my housekeeping remarks.
Okay, now we'll have the salute to the flag. We've had roll call. I'll do the salute this evening. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Public comments on the matters of this meeting. Do we have any public online? I've been told possibly not.
Yeah, we have a number of folks in the boardroom here, but these are all staff. It's about half of the Water Resources Department is here this evening. We also have a few folks online, and by their names, I think we'd identify them as folks involved with the topic we'll be talking about. Staff and also our consultant team members are also on the line too. But certainly it's an opportunity for anybody to raise your hand and indicate a desire to make a comment or ask a question about this topic on the agenda.
Okay, seeing no hands, no attendance in the public. We'll go ahead. Start up item number 4.
Okay, item 4 on the agenda is Water Resources Planning Workshop. And this is the first in a series of workshops planned for calendar years 2024 and 2025. That'll focus on planning for long-term management of the district's water resources in the face of climate change, evolving regulations, declining availability of water supplies, new water supply alternatives, and other factors, using an integrated resources planning approach. This workshop series builds on previous workshops conducted in 2022 and 2023. This workshop will specifically include the following topic: Water Resources Master Planning Status Update. And I'll turn it over just briefly for some remarks by our Director of Water Resources, Laura Heides.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. We're pleased to be here tonight to provide this update on water supply planning efforts. And I just want to say thank you to the folks in the room from staff who are here to support this item from left to right: Leonard Ash, Tan Z, and Michelle Walden. And I'm pleased to turn it over to Thomas Nizer, our water supply and planning manager, who will be making tonight's presentation.
All right, thank you. Okay, that's on. Great, well, good evening. This is just a brief update. Not that brief. Just a brief update on where we've been, where we are right now, and where we're headed with the update to our water supply master plan. We noted we were looking for a better cover photo here, looking for something circa 1995. But instead we got a nice photo of the very full Quarry Lakes after the regrade, which is one of the central recommendations from the 1995 IRP. So there's a nice little nexus there. So we'll, like I said, we're just going to see where we've been, where we are, where we're going. So as a recall for members of the public, maybe online, why are we doing this? What are we doing and why are we doing it? We're updating our water supply master plan, and we decided that we need to take a phased approach to this. So we're currently nearing the end of phase 1, and phase 1 is basically a scoping. It's a big listening stage We elicited input from the community through public survey, through through interest group workshops, as well as interviews with some staff to help the project team get a sense of what the interests are for establishment of goals and objectives to be achieved with a new plan. And at the end of that, we're going to push into phase 2, which is going to be the actual plan development. But you can't really scope phase 2 until you've done that big listening process in phase 1. And so that's why we needed to give it that time. The drivers for our update, if you recall, are really, we've just seen a lot of change since 1995. We had a great plan, 1995 plan. It's still very functional. It still gives us a lot of direction, but it's sort of reached the end of its useful life, really because of changes in the environment, literal and figurative environment. We've seen substantial change in the characteristics of our imported water supply, how much water we get, as well as other restrictions on that water. We're evaluating challenging new water resource initiatives. Los Vaqueros comes to mind, obviously, consideration of recycled water, reused water, very expensive alternatives. We need to be informed about how we proceed with decisions to invest, if we need to invest at all. We've also got expanding water quality concerns. PFAS is the topic du jour, but we know we've got a new regulatory concern seemingly every 2 years, and it's not going to stop this year. And one huge one is the climate change uncertainty. We're living with climate change now. 30 years ago, people didn't even understand it except in a few academic circles. And the reality of it has really become so apparent in just the past few years. And it's just getting started. So we've got a lot of risk. There's also a lot of regulatory uncertainty that we're facing. The operations of the State Water Project, as mentioned, water quality concerns, endangered species. And then one final thing is that the community has changed substantially over the past 30 years. It is a different demographic, socioeconomic demographic than was here in 1995. And it's important that we take the time to listen to the community and make sure that we're understanding what the interests are of the present day customers, not the customers who were here 30 years ago. And all of this, of course, creates financial pressure. So the umbrella term for all. The objective here is to make a framework, a plan that forms the framework for decision-making for the decades to come. As these uncertainties unfold in front of us, we want to have the tools and a guide map for how to navigate these things without spinning out and, stalling out and wasting time evaluating what it is we need to know. We want to have the framework for making decisions and proceeding. So just to recap where we've been for phase 1, we're here in the spring. To date, we've held a number of basically listening sessions with the public and with those interest groups. And the consultant team has been working with staff to propose a few things, including draft objectives for the board to consider, which we'll be convening in a month's time to discuss, as well as preparing an engagement plan from the information we've heard from the community, how the community wants to receive information and to provide information as we move into phase 2. And as I mentioned, in the spring, we are going to have a board workshop on April 25th to review these items. So specific highlights of those listening sessions I mentioned, we had 4 interest groups in particular: environmental, regulatory, community advocates, related agencies, other government agencies. And then we held a special groundwater users interest group to sort of pay homage to the Niles Cone and our history as basically being a groundwater agency, but also to respect the new requirements of SGMA to fulfill those and to incorporate those into the planning process. So we did a robust public survey. Our consultant that we all know well, Adam Poblowski, says the numbers that we got responding to the survey actually provide a really good high confidence on the results. So that's positive. You'll be hearing about that next month. We have a draft communication and engagement plan based on the public input. And as I mentioned, goals and objectives for a new plan.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Sure.
So what was involved with community advocacy?
The members of community advocacy groups, that would be things like LEAF. That's it's a task group that was specifically of community advocates. So we have a handful of folks that were invited to that session. The idea with these work group sessions is that when we go into phase 2, we're going to have all the voices at the same room, at the table at the same time. What we wanted to do in this first phase was to separate out the groups that are a little bit more common interest so that we could have a more focused discussion. So if we have the environmental community, we didn't necessarily want the development interest folks in the same room at the same time. We wanted to hear an open dialogue from those separate interests. In the future phase, they're all going to be coming together.
So who were the groups invited to the consumer?
The invite
community
list,
Advocacy,
I don't have the invite list with me, but we can make it available for sure.
interested.
Yeah, we had to, I regret to say, we had pretty poor attendance on everything except the last two, the government, the related government agencies and the the groundwater interests. Those were pretty well attended, but the first two were pretty small attendance. Okay, and before I go, I have to apologize. We have the old date of the workshop on here, the 24th. The date is actually the 25th. I apologize. We had both dates as placeholders. So our next steps are to hold a board workshop on April 25th. You'll receive a presentation of that consolidated input from that public survey, as well as those interest groups. We'll have a preview of that communication plan, goals and objectives, and the proposed work plan for phase 2. And this isn't just a listening session for the board. The board will be expected to provide input and help us finalize the scope before we can proceed. And this is just a rough outline of what the next phase might look like. It's pretty standard water supply planning, starting with working on supply and demand needs assessment. We already have a lot of that done. And then evaluating those water resource options that the board wants to be considering, putting together portfolios to see how they perform, and evaluating those and preparing a final plan based on the input. There'll be a scattering of board meetings across this period, but it'll take us through pretty much the end of calendar year 2025 is the current schedule. And with that, are there any more questions? Dr. Weed.
Did the prior plan have a contingency chapter on what we would do if we were to lose a major water supply or needed to rely on local supplies?
It's been a long time since I've read the whole plan. If there was, it was a very minor reference to it. I'm going to say no, not in a substantive way, but we have since done those studies, as you know.
We had asked, at least a suggestion when we were developing the current plan, that we look at what would happen if we were to lose any one of our water supplies for 6 months or more. I would expand upon that and with my view that a drought is episodic and should be viewed as a contingency rather than a conservation as a way of life mindset.
Noted.
I have a suggestion based on your answer to my question. Because I would like to see more community involvement. I've mentioned that at prior meetings. And so I don't know about Union City and Newark, but I know Fremont has a sustainability commission or committee that is active and drafted up their climate change initiatives and policies for the future. We should have those people involved, folks from Maloney College.
Those are both on the list.
And you might even want to take a look at like the Economic Development Commission, Planning Commission for all three cities. And I would also invite in, just thinking off the top of my head, maybe representatives of the police department, fire departments that may want to have a preview into how we're going to deal with, future emergencies, hazard mitigation, those kind of things. And Lastly, I would include, folks like the Alameda Creek Alliance, Sierra Club, um, League of Women Voters, because they take a broad look at our community, and it is a Tri-City League of Women Voters. I was a longtime member.
As I said, I don't have the list with me, but I assure you, almost all of these people you referenced were on the invite list. Yeah, but we'll make sure to have that information for you.
I don't know if there are any other thoughts here.
I don't have any questions, but I'll just piggyback on those comments, and I'll also be interested to see who we invited and of those folks who actually showed up. And then I think that'll help us interpret the results of the community survey as well.
I think it will be a very interesting discussion next month.
No question, just a comment, I guess, an expectation. So when you present the results of all these work group discussions, I assume, is the same thing. You would give us an idea who actually answered and provided the type of input?
Yes, yeah, the public survey certainly has that sort of cross-sectional demographic data.
Right. I probably, a little bit unusually, I don't need to know the first name
Sure.
of the specific organization,
Okay.
but I would like to know what type of interest they have. So you could group them. I guess that's what I'm saying. Because I am interested in hearing people's thoughts and opinions about us and where we should go per the interest they are representing.
Might be interesting to get some schools involved too. You could spark a brainstorm session with some of the environmental science classes, at our high schools.
We have noted previously, we did want to have a youth interest group represented.
Yeah, and when we have open houses like at TP2 or ESAL plant, we get a lot of those science teachers and students that come to those events. Tell them to all think out of the box.
All right.
Run out of sand.
Further comments?
Well, there's no further comments. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Just a quick update. I think there'll be more excitement in April, and it's actually helpful to hear from the board, what you're interested in terms of what we gathered and how you'd like to see that sort of categorized. So we'll have some good information for you coming up here shortly. Next on the agenda is item 5 is general manager's reports, and I don't have anything to add this evening. And so we'll go right to item 6, director's comments and our agenda item requests.
Leafly waiting for Director Sethy's comment on item 6.4.
You know what? I'm actually going to defer on that report if I could until April 11th, because I want to sit down and prepare some notes for distribution, things I learned, and things that are relevant. You may not believe it, but this trip had a lot of important stuff that was relevant to our district.
I completely believe it, and was very jealous of him.
I will only say that it was like going through 4 days of boot camp, because I was up at 5 a.m. every morning and to bed at 11 o'clock for 4 days in a row, and crammed with information. It was a tremendous educational experience. I'll limit it at that. So on 6.1, I thought I already reported on this, but I'll do it again. Really, the JPA is working on service agreements, facilities usage agreements, the tie-in agreement with DWR for Bethany Transfer Pipeline. We're working on a reduced budget right now, but having a initial discussions about amendment number 6 to our agreement. And that's about it. Mr. Wunderlich attended the most recent meeting because I was on the water education trip. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I wasn't planning any specific items to add. It was a interesting meeting. No real specific action items to report back, but I know within the board, there's going to be a few changes in terms of representation. And that's, I know I sent you a recap email because the representative from Grasslands is leaving their organization. Will still be involved in the project. I believe Valley Water will be making a new appointment as well. So there's, but in terms of any other updates, it was more, kind of business as usual.
On item 6.2, we had a good meeting. Everybody was in attendance, except for one person on that was on audio. And we really just received a presentation from the executive director of the Design and Construction Authority. And we had a very lengthy closed door session. Open door session on what options the DCFA has for future funding opportunities on the project. And we got an update from the DWR attorney on what's going on with the Superior Court decision and filing an appeal. And he agreed to give us a copy of the formal appeal filing submitted. So that's about it. South Bay Engineers Club. You were in attendance too.
Yes,
Doesn't have
I
your name
reported.
Doesn't have your name on here.
Oh, no, that was
So,
last week for me. Here we go.
The room awoke, gave a fine presentation. Our general manager was present. We got a lot of good feedback from folks on the Alameda Creek Fish Passage projects. And our next meeting the presentation is by East Bay Mud on their pipeline infrastructure. So that should be really interesting. And Garum gave an excellent presentation. So I've already reported on 6.4 and 6.5. I was not able to attend because I was not able to get a flight back till Saturday from the trip.
All right. Well, the well conference was in San Jose. It had, I thought, good, reasonable attendance. They alternate between, it seems like Southern California, the Valley, and then come up to San Jose where they have strong support from the directors of the Valley Water District. The topics were of general nature and with an emphasis on equity. And it's really a networking opportunity. There's nothing earth-shaking or novel discussion in any of the presentations. Thank you.
So I actually have an agenda item request. Probably needs to be a closed session item. So I read in the news that the White House actually notified and EPA notified the state about cybersecurity risk to the water industry.
We have seen a notice, yeah.
Okay, and it also sound like there may be opportunity to get some money. May or may not be opportunity. So can staff look
Sure.
into that? And if it's appropriate, bring back either probably will be in a closed session on how we intend to I guess one is, please brief us on ACWD's resiliency to this type of cyber attack.
Mhm.
And two, what we're doing about it. And three, if there are funding opportunities that we could latch on.
Yeah, funding opportunities is new to me, so I will definitely look into that. And I know we are going through the details of the notices that we've received, and certainly be happy to inform the board via some method. If these are things the board's already very familiar with, we might just provide a little bit of an update as to this particular issue. But we'll definitely look at what we can provide the board.
No guarantee on the funding opportunity. That is more of look into if there's
Okay, all
funding
right.
opportunity, because after all, the federal government wants to help us.
Yeah, yeah.
Further comments? I think we'll be heading then to closed session, correct?
Well, actually, do I have a second for this agenda item request?
As
Take it
always,
away.
Or at least we need to see some more nods.
I'll second. I'm always interested in an update on cybersecurity.
Yeah, it requires two different.
Okay, so are we ready for the report to go into closed session? It's now 4:26 and the board is going to convene into closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 subsection D2. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one potential case. We can now convene into session.
Two. Yeah, I was reading.
Sure. Okay, the board has returned from closed session, and will our attorney please read out the.
Sure, happy to do that. It's now 5:56 and the board convened in closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 subsection D2. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one potential case, and no action was taken in the closed session, and that concludes the open session report.
Okay. Well, with that, hearing no other issues, I will declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
All right.